Sure. Thank you so much. I'd like to share my screen in a minute, but let me introduce myself. My name, as you heard, Elizabeth Kipp. I'm a stress management and historical trauma specialist, yoga informed and trauma trained recovery coach and ancestor clearing practitioner. Um, and uh, and I'm in recovery from addiction almost 12 years now. And I lived with chronic pain for 40 years, which is an addiction to stress. And 31 years of that, I was on prescription opiates and benzodiazepines. So I was able to heal from the chronic pain, which was amazing. The drugs didn't do anything but make it worse. And I learned a lot about addiction, and I learned a lot about the confusion out there around medication, around chronic pain, and around addiction. And I grew up in a family and a society, really a culture that was rife with addiction. So lots of experience there. Can I just hit the share button here, Terrain? Oh, here we go. Okay, great. All right. So let's get started. Can you see that?
Yep, we can see it now.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much. So we'll be looking at addiction in families, understanding, healing, and reconnection. I can't tell you how grateful I am to be here today. We're really diving into a topic that touches so many. Whether we speak about it or not, addiction in families is complicated and present pretty much anywhere, everywhere. Today, we'll explore what addiction is, what forms it can take, how it affects people, and family systems, and most importantly, what we can do about it. All right. So let's start with what is addiction. We'll begin with a broad, inclusive definition from a few different perspectives. Addiction is any behavior we continue to do that has negative consequences on our lives. This goes beyond substances. Yes, drugs and alcohol are included, but addiction lives wherever we use something to escape discomfort, numb our feelings, or avoid reality. Addiction is less about what we do and more about why we do it, especially when it's causing harm and we feel powerless to stop. Addiction feeds on the calculus of power, the power of hunger and the pursuits of its appetites. It comes in many forms, yet its energy is mistakable. Craving and more craving, a well that has no bottom. This is the state of things when we lose our authentic connection to ourselves, to others, and to our soul. And it is this disconnection and the profound loss we experience because of it that provides the momentum of wanting more. And no matter how much we seem to get from the external world, attention from fame, money, its power, prestige, stimulation, addiction has us chasing for its own sake. And this is the suffering of addiction. As Gabor Mate, Dr. Gabor Mate, a physician and a leader in the field of trauma and addiction, he reminds us, don't ask why the addiction, ask why the pain. So the root of addiction is that it's a coping mechanism we use to help us manage our lives when we're suffering from unresolved trauma. And we have plenty of ways to distract ourselves from our pain. Here are the 6 main types of addiction: alcohol, drugs, people, codependency, sex, love addiction, people pleasing, many aspects of that, money, gambling, overspending, scarcity, the scarcity fueled hoarding, of course, food addiction, which includes anorexia or restriction, binging or bulimia, and other disordered eating behaviors. And 6th, technology, scrolling, gaming, and social media addiction. And then there are the 5 aggravations. These are internal habits that fuel stress and dysfunction: self-doubt, procrastination, negative thinking, resentment, and judgment. These are the patterns that run under the big 6 addictions as deeper maladaptive mechanisms to cope with pain. And let's be clear here, we're talking about any pain, whether physical, emotional, psychological, or spiritual. They all send the same signal to the brain: it hurts. The brain cannot tell the difference between a broken bone and a broken heart. Let's look at what addiction looks like. In a person, it often looks like secrecy, hiding, or aloofness. It can look like mood swings, anxiety or numbness, guilt, shame, or defensiveness, being separate from the rest of the family, selfishness, manipulation, and low self-esteem. Here are some of the common roles in the family that are all tied up in the addictive behavior. There's the addict, who's the central figure whose behavior dominates the whole system. The enabler protects the addict from consequences. This often shows up as codependency. The hero tries to fix the family by being perfect and overachieving, another codependent thing. The scapegoat acts out or rebels and is often blamed for the family's problems. The lost child withdraws emotionally and flies under the radar. And the mascot uses humor to deflect tension and distract from the pain. We also have the drama triangle, which is a common unconscious dynamic in families where the victim, one person plays the victim: "For me, I'm so powerless." And then there's the persecutor who's blaming, "It's all your fault." And the rescuer who will say, "I'll save you even if it hurts me." And we get stuck on this triangle, often in unconscious ways. And the way to deal with that triangle is to step off the triangle. We also have belief systems and coping mechanisms. So addiction's not just about, doesn't just affect our behavior, it distorts what we believe is normal. Like, we don't talk about our problems, or I have to do everything myself, or love means sacrifice, or if I just try harder, they'll change. Do any of these things ring a bell to you? We have communication breakdowns in the family that show up as passive-aggressive behavior or stonewalling, lies or secrets done to protect others, in quotes. We feel like we're walking on eggshells. We avoid having an honest conversation. And there's over or under sharing depending on what role we're playing. Also, we can have generational patterns of dysfunction. Intergenerational trauma is unresolved pain from our ancestors, can live in our nervous systems and our belief systems, even in our genes expressing epigenetically. We carry coping mechanisms that were once tools of survival, but they don't serve us anymore. And this is where the working with the imprints of intergenerational trauma and ancestor clearing becomes important. Many families unknowingly repeat the pain of previous generations until someone becomes conscious enough to stop the cycle. The core wound at the core of all addiction is this disconnection from ourselves, from others, from something greater, from our true feelings, from our body's signals, from our spirit, from each other. Often, this is not just about what's happening in this generation, but what's been passed down from those before us. So, what can we do about it? Here's the big question. Can we face it and acknowledge it? The first step is simply telling the truth. not blaming, not excusing, just recognizing what's happening and how it's impacting you or your family. And we want to break the silence and end the stigma. Secrets and shame thrive in the dark, and shame is the food of addiction. Healing begins when we bring the truth into the light, either with a therapist, a sponsor, a trusted community, or a trusted friend, a safe person. We want to make sure that we get into a supportive community. We cannot do this work in recovery alone. This is a we thing. We need to educate ourselves and our families about the dynamics of addiction and the proven ways to end suffering. We need to understand the nervous system. Addiction is not a moral failing. It's a dysregulated nervous system seeking relief. Practices like breath work, sleep hygiene, nutrition, mantra, ancestral clearing help regulate and restore balance. We bring yoga into this space as a beautiful way to really find stability and grounding in your recovery. We're traumatized in unsafe relationships, so we heal in safe relationships. So connection and safe relationships are so crucial for healing this addictive behavior that's not just one person in the family. If one person in the family is addicted, everyone's part of that triangle, part of that cycle. Recovery is not just about abstaining from a substance or a behavior, it's about reconnecting to our authentic self, to others, through honest relationships, to spirit, however we define that. Sometimes the most powerful question that we can ask ourselves or a loved one is, where does it hurt? And how can we be with that pain together? Not trying to fix it, just being the witness. And finally, I'm sharing you a beautiful quote from one of my teachers, Krishna Kaur, who said, we're all addicted to something. It may not be a substance. It may be a certain attitude or approach to life or a way of seeing ourselves. We're addicted to something. We're locked into something that defined us at some point, or that helped us to feel okay about ourselves at some point. And we realize at some point that whatever that was that served, comforted, held, gave us strength, gave us some meaning at some level, at some point, those things became like shackles, like a vice that's around us. These layers of protection we put around ourselves that helped us get through the night are choking out the day. When you start to see that, that's getting in your way, that it's getting in your way, then somehow it helps to make the decision that I want to do something different. There, that's in a nutshell. If you thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to connect with me, you can find me at my website at elizabeth-kipp.com. And I'd love to hear some questions if you have any.
Absolutely. So first and foremost, thank you so much, Elizabeth, for sharing that. I have an example, but it's going to lead to my question. You mentioned that at this one of the second last slide, I believe it was, where we're all addicted to something, and that brought up someone I used to work with. He was addicted to success. He always wanted to work hard and be the best at the job, right? One day, his wife she was pregnant and water breaks, she's due. She's on her way to the hospital because he's so addicted to success. He stayed at work and made sure he got the final numbers, the final sales, and he missed the delivery of his child, his son, his only child they have together. This leads me to my question. Why do you think so many of us sacrifice parts of ourselves, parts of our lives, parts of our relationships when it comes to the addiction in regards to our families?
That's a big question. It's a very interesting example, and it's a really good. It's not just addiction to success, it's also addiction to what we call workaholism. So that's a certain frequency. All of this, Tommy Rosen, who's I'm an addiction recovery coach through Recovery 2.0, which is Tommy Rosen's uh, platform, and he calls addiction the frequency of addiction. It's like an energetic expression, really, in all addictions like that. So overworking, success, they're all the same. I need more. And not only I need more, but I'm looking away. I'm looking away from something that I don't want to look at. And I will tell you, I've been pondering this for a long time. What's the root, right? And I've got this ancestral piece that I bring into the whole equation. And I've been an ancestral clearing practitioner since 2014. So, and I was first introduced to it in 2013. So I'm really rooted in that practice. And my feeling is that the reason that addiction is so prevalent nowadays is because we're living in systems that have designed the heart right out of them. And who in the world is able to, how are we supposed to cope with that when we can't even find heart? We just can't find it. My journey in my recovery, if you had to ask me what's been the most significant journey other than unwinding my nervous system out of a huge stress habit, it's been the journey back to my heart. It's been not just the journey back to my heart, but what is it going to take to unbound it, to allow it to loose from the bindings that I put around, the armoring I put around it, just to be able to step into the world, which is this place that's got, I mean, like the level of suffering out there is just epic. So, and our history, the momentum of our history of suffering is, and we carry that, right? So you're asking kind of what's the root, and I just laid it down the way I see it.
What do you think then are some of the impacts to the families, especially young children, when there's a form of addiction that is overtaking the parents?
Yeah, what from that's a great question. One of the things that I study, I sit in circles around and study with trauma teachers, trauma people that work in the trauma space. And one of the things that, and which is a fairly new field, all things considered. And one of the things that really impressed me was that they said dysregulated parents raise dysregulated children. And so addiction is this looking away and this dysregulation, this imbalance in the stress response, which I didn't even get into that part. It's we're out of balance. We're dysregulated. And how are you supposed to, how are children supposed to, I lived in a family that was dysfunctional, that had this addictive energy in it. And I still have this terrain, with all the work I've done, I still have this. My lesson was duck and cover. Duck and cover. Whenever somebody like calls me out, if I'm in a class or something and the teacher calls my name, I still duck and cover. Even if I know the answer, my instinct is to do this. Right? But what is that? It's a survival response. Yeah. So there's nothing wrong with anybody. Our machinery is acting exactly as designed. We're trying to keep ourselves safe. We're just using a really unhealthy way to do it.
And one more question, Elizabeth, before I let you go. 3 wishes, right? What are 3 things you wish parents knew about the impact of addiction in their families and why?
One, it's not a moral failing. It's actually this survival. As I said, our machinery is acting exactly as designed. So this is kind of natural. 2, children, when they're below 7 years old, they're not able to regulate their emotions. So it's up to the adults to help them, to hold a grounded, safe space for them to learn the process of dealing with their emotions. Also, we have these mirror neurons, so our children mirror what we do. This is one of the ways they learn to socialize so quickly, right? So so that second thing, uh, really important to really kind of like understand uh, what the child needs and how important it is for us to have our own emotional intelligence as parents. And if we don't know what that is and we are having difficulty with it, then we need help. We need to ask for help. And there's help out there, which is amazing. So please don't feel like you have to do this all alone. There's help out there. So that's the third thing is ask for help, right? Um, don't be afraid of that. Uh, I grew up with a mother who had bipolar disorder and undiagnosed, didn't nobody understood what that was then, and um, and the way the family treated us, we're just gonna hide that under the rug. We're just gonna like, oh, that she's just doing that thing she does. So nobody, took any of that seriously. And my brother and I and my father, everybody kind of around her felt the fallout from that, but nobody knew about what to do about it, right? So it's really important that we're not afraid to step out and say, I need help. It's so important. Yeah.